Welcome to MyLife Chassidus Applied, episode 68, a special pre-Shavuos episode covering Torah education and our children. Being that next Shabbos is Erev Shavuos, goes right into Shavuos, we thought it appropriate to discuss topics related to Shavuos, of course, which connect to our children, to connect to chinuch and general education, and other related issues. I want to begin by saying we will also be addressing and as we have been doing, the essays that had come in for the essay contest. We continue to post them. As I read them, I'm continuously amazed and touched by so many great essays touching different topics of life. I just wanted to share that there have been different requests for all kinds of related things. This MyLife Chassidus Applied in general, and particularly the contest, has generated tremendous interest and tremendous feedback, as well as all kinds of requests for different things. I wanted to ask if there's anyone out there that would like to volunteer, for example, translating the Hebrew essays into English, or other related things. If in any way you'd like to participate, we more than welcome it. Please contact us, either by email at meaningfullife.com. You'll just see a contact button. You can write to wisdomreb@meaningfullife.com or to simon@meaningfullife.com. And we have other things that perhaps can be done. We welcome everybody's participation, and we have specific things that we can do. The truth is, we are overwhelmed by the different options, and really deserves its own message, to be honest, its own organization, just to handle the whole approach of the contest, the essays, how to incorporate it into the school system, which many schools want to do, and other ways. We also welcome ideas, of course. So I wanted to just open that up, especially now that we're coming to Mattan Torah. And for Chassidim, Mattan Torah is also the Mattan Torah Primus HaTorah, which means Chassidus and applying Chassidus. And of course, that was the Chiddush of Mattan Torah in the first place, as the Rabbeim bring the main Chiddush of Mattan Torah was not just that the Torah was given to earth, but also was the Bittul HaGzeda, the breach, the schism between Elyenim and Tachtenim, between matter and energy, between matter and spirit. That up till that point, Elyenim la yardu lamata, that which was spiritual could not permeate and penetrate and transform which was Tachtenim, the below, the material, and Tachtenim la yardu Elyenim, and that which was material was not able to reach the highest levels of spirituality. So there was basically a compartmentalization, even a dichotomy. And Mattan Torah bridged this gap by the Bittul HaGzeda. Gzeda means both decree, and Gzeda also means split or schism, by allowing this integration. And essentially is the original E equals mc squared, where Einstein said energy equals matter times the speed of light to the second power. From the point of view of Chassidus, Mattan Torah was the original energy equals matter, meaning that energy and matter are interchangeable and one can be transformed into the other, which was the ultimate purpose of existence, is this integration, that in our lives, in this world in which we live, we're able to connect to the highest levels. So to share a few words about Mattan Torah, being that this is a pre-Shavuos episode, and as well as Parsha Bamidbar, which we always read right before Mattan Torah. This year it's connected, as I mentioned. We share a few things that I think hopefully are applicable and personal and accessible in ways that we can apply to our personal lives. There are many, many themes of Mattan Torah, there are many themes of Shavuos, but the few key themes, let's begin with, since I'm talking about Elyenim and Tachtenim, is this ability to bring these two worlds together, which in language of our Chassidus Applied is basically, can a human being with the conventional struggles that we all have in this material world really connect, and not only connect, to integrate the divine into his or her life? The answer from Mattan Torah is absolutely. It's an interesting sikha from the Frierdiker Rebbe in Tafshin Dalet, Shavuos Tafshin Dalet, where he was asked the question, it's page 136, Shaila, was hat aufgetan Mattan Torah bei Moshe Rabbeinu? What did Mattan Torah contribute to Moshe Rabbeinu, who was already connected to God, who was already connected to Torah? So he said, by Ali Eden is Mattan Torah Gili Atzmos Ein Sof. So the Chiddush of Mattan Torah for all the Jews was the Gili Atzmos Ein Sof, the highest revelations of Nechi Hashem Elokecha. But Moshe's Chachma Elad Atzilas, this is the question. What does his Chachma Elad Atzilas? And there's already Ein Sof. So what did Mattan Torah accomplish in him? Tshuva, the Alter Friedrich Rebbe's answer, Matan Torah hat aufgetan bei Moshe Rabbeinu zu sehen, die Meile und Chashivas für jeden Eden, afilu für Na'ish Pashut. And he elaborates that Moshe Rabbeinu, the Chiddush was the opposite. For Tachtenim, the Chiddush of Matan Torah, for this was us on this material, mundane plane. The contribution of Matan Torah is that we can access the highest spiritual levels. For the spiritual levels, the highest spiritual levels, like Moshe Rabbeinu, the Chiddush is the contributions that they should appreciate this material world, that they should appreciate the qualities of a simple person who may not be on that same lofty level. It parallels somewhat also in Shavuos Tafshin Aleph. The Friedrich Rebbe also spoke about, was also asked the question whether Matan Torah affects all levels of the soul, Neshama, Nefesh, Ruch, Neshama, Chai, Yechida, and he answered yes. And what is the Chiddush of Matan Torah in Yechida, which is the core soul? It's already on a core level, on a spiritual divine level. And the answer is to appreciate the descent of the soul inside the body. So fascinating insight if you think about it, because it means that the objective here is not just to climb and to reach the highest spiritual levels, but it's to permeate and affect and infuse our material, mundane lives and appreciate that what is accomplished in this world, which means simple, each of us as a ish poshet, each of us as a simple person without necessarily high levels of ava and yira, love and awe, or deep comprehension of the divine, that Matan Torah taught those greatest souls to appreciate what happens in our personal struggles. I find that to be very empowering and very gratifying, because it means that there's no one that's left out. Everyone is part of it. As the Rebbe always emphasizes with Shavuos, by Matan Torah, that Matan Torah could not have been given, the Torah could not have been given if not every individual was there. You needed everyone there because this was the mandate given and one person missing, even a relative simple person, the whole thing could not have happened. So that's one thing to talk about. To take that a step further, it means in practical terms as well that in each of us we have the divine part of our lives, we have our material part. And often we compartmentalize. At work we're one way, at home we're another way. When we're davening we're a third way. When it's a Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah is another way. And Achdus Hashem, as Chassidus explains, dictates that there's one God and there's one reality. It's just different manifestations. And Matan Torah Shavuos was the birthday, the beginning of that experience for the first time, where there was that total fusion. Of course, will be completely culminated and consummated at when Mashiach comes, as the Medrash says. Matan Torah was the beginning of the marriage. Yem Chasanos is the Edison, and Mashiach comes will be the Nesuyin, the full consummation, the full joining and the fusion, which is a central theme in all life, to understand that we do not have to compartmentalize our lives. We just simply have to find out what is the core mission, the hub, and then find different ways to express it. Anyone that's a very focused person knows focus doesn't mean you're doing the same thing all the time. It means that whatever you do is connected by the hub. So you may be doing different things, but they're all connected by your one mission statement and your one purpose in life. Another central theme of Shavuos, of course, is chinuch. B'neinu arevim ba'deinu, or b'neinu arevim ma'isanu. Hashem asked, God asked for a guarantor, since He was giving this tremendous gift to the human race. Give me guarantors. So they offered the sages, they offered the Avis, the patriarchs, they offered the prophets. They were all rejected. B'neinu, children. I suggest as an exercise, a pre-Shavuos exercise, a great sikha to read, especially for parents, is the 8th sikha of Shavuos Tafshin Chavtes. I think I mentioned it already in a previous episode, but Shavuos Tafshin Chavtes is a beautiful sikha about the impact and the power of parents and educators and children. It refers to even medical and psychological insights lately, discovering ideas that the Torah already talked about, that the impact on children begins far before we ever could imagine, that they're impressionable, and therefore everything that happens in life affects them, especially their parents. It's a great sikha to read. It's an excellent way to prepare for Matan Torah, which of course leads us to the Hirah, the directive the Rebbe gave in Tafshin Mem, Shavuos Tafshin Mem, before Shavuos Tafshin Mem, to bring the children, even the newborns, to shul to hear the Aseret Adibros when we recreate the Sinai experience. And of course the question, what can little children, newborn children, what do they hear and see? And the Rebbe brought the Asher Yaladate, brought from Pirkei Avos, that his mother, why does he say when he's given all the other sages, they have different qualities, Bayar Sud, This one has my name is Gaber, different qualities. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos describes the 5 students of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, and Ashri Aladate was one of them, which is how precious, how beautiful, how wonderful, how cherished is the one that gave birth to you. Because the mother would bring him as a little child in a risa, in a bassinet, in a crib, in a whatever it was in those days, to listen to Torah even though he was just newborn, because the impact of the environment, the impact of everything around us affects children even more than adults. The fact that they may not react as we do, they can't communicate, it doesn't mean it doesn't affect. Like the Rebbe gives the example of a warm ball of wax, which is the child. Every experience becomes etched in that wax, and as the wax hardens, as we harden into adults, those experiences become part of our personality, second nature. So that's the power of our young age, where the impressionable age, that things become etched, whether it's for good or for bad, wounds, scars, and obviously we're focusing on positive experiences that change a person forever. And later it becomes far, far more difficult once the wax is hardened to do something about it. Doesn't mean we can't, but there's obviously the healthiest, the most powerful way. The Rebbe gives the example sometimes of a tree. When a seed, you make a little scratch in a seed, then when the tree becomes a big tree, it's not just a scratch, it's a big gnash, a big scar, because everything becomes magnified as we grow and develop. So the responsibility for our children, the responsibility for shaping our homes is a critical theme of Mattan Torah, because that was the guarantors, the ones that God said, since you will commit to this, not just for yourself but for your children, I know there's a future. So an excellent opportunity now is to relook at our own lives, at our homes, at our families. What are we doing? Often we get so overwhelmed with work and other external pressures, we forget to focus on the most important thing of all, the precious gift, which is our children. This is both Nasei Tev and Sur Mera, which is, of course, creating the healthy environments. Like in a garden, you have to nurture, you have to water, you have to fertilize, you have to do whatever it takes to make the ground a cultivating and nurturing environment for the flowers to grow. So the role of parents are like gardeners, but you also have to weed the garden and make sure there are no negative influences that can in some way impede the growth, God forbid. And this includes many topics we've talked about throughout the weeks in these episodes of My Life, which is to make sure that Taras HaMishpacha means much more than just mikveh. It means a holy and pure environment in every possible way, including sexual and other ways, that we bring up a family, a home that is saturated with kedusha, with holiness. This is how we prepare for Mattan Torah in a very practical way. It doesn't have to always be the deepest and the most meditative experience. It comes down to simply creating healthy children. Like they say, the great line that we don't create a better world to have for our children, we create children for a better world. Because it's our children that will shape the universe as we move forward in life. And one more final thing I'd like to share. One of my favorite themes around Shavuos is always the Bamidbar connection to Shavuos, and that is, why do we read Pasha Bamidbar before Mattan Torah? So also Bamidbar Sinai. So this is Har Sinai. Mattan Torah was at Har Sinai. But still, what the Bamidbar, the name Bamidbar? So the Rebbe brings in many sikhs the connection Bamidbar to Mattan Torah. Why was Taka Torah given in a Midbar? As the Medrash asks. And there are many reasons given for it. And one of the reasons is because Midbar is a Mokum Hefker. Midbar is a wilderness, a desert, where people don't live. It's not habitable. So why would the Eibishter, of all places, give a special gift? Not just a special gift. Chem de Gnuza, the Torah calls it. The Talmud, the Gemara calls it. Chem de Gnuza is a hidden treasure. And there's a whole debate. The angels wanted it, and they said the human race isn't worthy of it. And a treasure like that, Shashuyim Lefana, of God's delights, God's personal playthings, meaning it's absolutely the closest thing to the divine, an expression of the divine. Why give it to the human race? And if you were going to give a gift like that, where would you give a special gift? You take somebody to a nice place, beautiful ambiance, a beautiful city, beautiful restaurant, a beautiful environment. Where did God take the Jews? He took them into a desert, a wilderness, completely uninhabitable, Nachashar of Akriv, Eretz Sivav, a land that is desolate, arid, as I said, antithetical to anything of human civilization, filled with all kinds of destructive forces. And Dafka there, in that heat, Mattan Torah was given. Why would you do that? So one of the answers given is because the Midbar is a mokum hefker. It's a no man's land. It's a place that nobody can lay claim. The Torah had been given in some city, whether it was Alexandria or Jerusalem or any other city, or Athens or Rome, then the citizens of that city could say forever, you have to pay us royalties every time you study Torah. This is my paraphrasing the Medrash. To show that Torah belongs to everybody and nobody can lay claim over it, the Eibishter said, I'll give it in a midbar. To show this truth belongs to everyone. It's no man's land. Al pi halach, al pi Torah, when you lose something in a city or it's near your home or so on, there's rules. But if you lose something in a midbar, mokum hefker, nobody can claim it because nobody lives there. This is the secret of all truth. It doesn't belong to anyone. It's God's truth. So if anyone says, I have a monopoly on truth, or I claim that I know better than anybody else, there's no such thing. We are all equally given the same Torah, and have all access to it. You know, the famous cynical joke where a guy comes to a rabbi and asks the rabbi, can you teach me the Torah? I hear it has all the secrets of life. He says, yes, it does have those secrets. Can you teach it to me? Of course. How much will it cost? He said, how could I charge you? God didn't charge us when he gave us the Torah. Moses didn't charge us. How could I charge? They sit down, they open up a Torah, and it's all in Hebrew. He says, the Hebrew, I don't know Hebrew. So the rabbi said, Hebrew lessons will be $20,000. Of course, this is one of the cynical jokes about in our time, where everything sounded great. He's getting the wisdom, he's getting the secrets, he's getting it for free. But the Hebrew lessons, this is not the way. This joke was not meant to be the way it should be done. Torah is accessible to all. And it's a fundamental truth because so often we get tainted and we're affected by the people who brought to us Torah. And remember, even though there are excellent teachers out there and great rabbis, but they don't own it. The Torah is our inheritance. It's everyone's birthright. And every child in its mother's womb was taught the entire Torah. And then upon birth we're made to forget, explains the Alter Rebbe in Likutei Torah Shlach. That forget means, why would you learn the entire Torah and make you forget? Because it's only forgotten on a conscious level. Unconsciously, we retain it. That's why it resonates. When you hear a truth and you say, I heard that somewhere, it resonates with me. It's because we have everything we have, and that there was no tuition for that. It's the best school. There's no school on earth that is as good as the schooling of each child in its mother's womb. And then from there on, we have to now reconnect. That's the word. We have to reconnect, because consciously we're made to forget, which is why we have this cleft over our lip. It was like the angel saying silence, meaning forgetting on that level. And the rest of life is chinuch, is really reconnecting. It's a reunion. It's resonance of an ideas that are already within us. That's the true study of Torah. So when you find a good teacher doesn't give you this truth. He helps uncover it. He helps eliminate the impediments and the blockages to allow the truth to emerge in each of us. If each of us felt this way, empowered, so many questions, imagine what we can accomplish. So many questions that come into our forum, which I should mention this now, place to ask any question you like anonymously is at a forum at meaningfullife.com/mylife. So many of the questions around this theme, I see a certain common thread of people feeling disempowered, hurt by teachers, hurt by the system, hurt by parents, hurt by themselves, feel it was imposed upon them, people demanding conformity, that you don't start losing yourself. I don't know who I am. Am I what other people expect of me? So that's the case in the secular world, it's one thing. But in the Torah world, the whole idea of Torah was, it's yours. It's your soul, it's your wisdom, it's God speaking to you and giving you all the resources, the blueprint for your life. What a good teacher, what a good parent, what a good teacher does is make sure that they get rid of the impediments that don't let you access it. But no one's giving it to you. You still say thank you, like it says, tivusa l'shakya, chamra l'mara tivusa l'shakya, the wine belongs to the owner, but the thank you is given to the waiter. So the waiter would be whoever is that facilitator, parent or educator that helped bring you to a place. Of course they deserve that acknowledgement, and they can actually change your life, and God forbid also hurt your life. But never forget, you control your destiny, because you have it all within you, just a matter of uncovering. Famous story when someone was traveling, I think, to Chicago, and Frierdiker Rebbe told him he was going to talk about a Sim Sefer Torah, and he was going to talk about the letters of the Torah. that the real letters of the Torah are not written letters, which means it's not part of you, it's just ink on parchment, but it's engraved within you. And when something is engraved, it's part of you. The only thing is, when it's engraved, what can happen is dust, moss, other growth can cover it. But you ever find the thrill of uncovering something, you find like letters beneath layers and layers of residue and dirt and so on? Excuse me. What you discover is something that was there already. It's a very different experience when you're digging and trying to find which is already there, that which is there, than trying to create something new. And it's a fundamental psychological principle that when you know you have confidence and you know that someone has the ability to do something and they just are not aware of it yet, or there are other things that are blocking it from happening, very different type of work than when you don't even know that a person has that potential. So the power of Chassidus, the power of Torah, is to teach us about the enormous potential we have and know it's our birthright and it's our ability to access. The fact that you may not have confidence in yourself, that you may have fears, or you may have other things that do not allow you to go there, distractions, that is the moss, the residue, the dirt. The Rebbe once wrote us in a psyche, it was Magia Sikhe, it said dust. The Rebbe wrote dust, Rosh Hashanah is dust sitra achra. Dust sitra achra. That's the sitra achra, the other side that deceives us into thinking that there's nothing there. But in truth, you have everything you need. God would never request and ask us to do something we're not capable of. It's a tremendous lesson. And this is what Mattan Torah really is. We are not being given something new. We're giving a truth that's embedded in our souls. And yes, on every Mattan Torah, the Chiddush was that it was given to us as a mandate, but no teacher, no individual, no parent on earth gives it to us. They help us uncover something that we already have. And I find that to be a tremendous lesson, especially in our day and age where there's so many con artists and shams and all kinds of scams and so on, to know that the Torah belongs to each of us. Nobody owns it. A good teacher inspires and awakens and is like a catalyst that stimulates an existing pilot flame that's already inside of you. You have to fan that flame and make it part of your conscious life. But the unconscious is there all the time. And that's one of the themes in that Sikh Shavuos Tafshach Chavtes where the Rebbe speaks, that children have it already. What you're doing is just simply touching something that's already existent and you're just revealing it. It's a very, very different type of experience. The Rebbe says there, even though the child may not see him, but the Keiches Lomim Heren yet. The Etzem HaNefesh hears and experiences all those truths. Our job is to bridge it and bring the unconscious into the conscious, the inexpressible into the expressible. Okay, much more can be said, and I believe this hopefully is helpful and also applicable, applied to Chassidus. So let us move now into some questions related to the topic at hand. Now, over the months, we've received many, many questions about the system, education system, children. A lot of them are very painful. So some of what I'm going to read may not be very pleasant, but I do not think it's appropriate to ignore these type of questions, even if they may be exceptions and not the norm, not the rule. But nevertheless, when people suffer, especially due to their children, and the children being turned off or in any ways disturbed by the whole education system, I think it's critical to talk about, especially pre-Shavuos, because the children are our guarantors. So that means we have to make sure that these children are, in a simchadika way, in a joyous way, embrace this great heritage and definitely not be turned off by it. So here's a few questions, and I will try to address it to the best of my ability. My son dropped out of yeshiva. He felt all anyone cared about was whether he was on time, had his shirt tucked in, and whether he went to mikveh. No one asked him how he was doing, no one encouraged him, just badgered him and made him feel bad about himself. He felt completely misunderstood at best and abused at worst. We tried a few other places and my son decided he had enough of Lubavitch yeshivas. What would the Rebbe say? Do all these boys have to be in the exact same model yeshiva? My question to you is this. But half of my son's class from Cheder are not in Lubavitch programs anymore. What would the Rebbe say about all these boys? Some are not in school at all anymore. My son said he's close with other boys from his class who absolutely hate yeshiva, but can't find a way to tell their parents, so they continue to suffer. "100 years ago, no way did all boys even go to yeshiva. And now we're throwing boys over the derech by demanding of them to conform to a life that does not suit every boy. One size does not fit all. But parents are terrified to do anything different, especially since Lubavitch offers absolutely nothing else but one model for every boy. Do you think the Rebbe would say it's time for a different model? Yes, we have a few alternatives for learning disabilities and vocational trades, but what about my son? He's extremely intelligent, doesn't want to learn a trade, he wants to learn, but not where he's forced to keep such a tight schedule or forced to go to mikveh or wear a hat while davening. I'm so fortunate that Bli Ayin Hara, my son, did not jump off the derech. He told me the only reason he didn't is because he knows that the sacrifices that my husband and I have been through to become Jewish. We're both Gerim. I have a younger son slated to start high school next year and don't know what to do. Although he has different personality with different strengths and weaknesses than my older son, I still don't think it's a good match. I really hope you find a way to address this, and I'm extremely grateful for you for reaching out and caring about the tremendous challenges we all face. How I dearly miss the Rebbe's physical presence. Thank you so much. Hatzlacha on your shlichus." Read a few more questions and then we'll try to address it. Rabbi Jacobson. I am passionate about my children's chinuch and I feel such a huge responsibility. The 20 minutes a day is nothing compared to the time, effort, and mental energy that goes into raising each child. The huge issue I have, and I know that I'm not the only one with this issue, is what are we doing about the boys' yeshiva system? I will try to keep the emotion out of this question. After 6 years of dealing with yeshivas, I feel frustrated, disgusted, resentful, and flabbergasted. I don't feel my boys grew in their Yiras Shamayim or skills. Learning chavrusas a whole day without having enough lectures and lessons, is this really the only Temchet Mimim way? My boys are good boys, but I've been so frustrated that their time wasn't valued. Should I be satisfied with this? Why can't my children be stimulated, challenged? And why can't they broaden the curriculum, like teach Navi, Jewish history, cover topics in halacha and Chassidus with a teacher? What would the Rebbe say about our education methods when so many boys and girls are losing their way? When I see my children have less Yiras Shamayim than when I send them off to school, I question everything. My son recently said that he wouldn't be surprised that many boys will leave Zal after their whole life being in Lubavitch and have no feeling to keep their yarmulke and tzitzis on. I feel like crying for our children who don't see a Rebbe, feel the beauty of Yiddishkeit in their bones, and have the knowledge to internalize what they learned for 20 years. This is a crisis. I feel bad even reading further because this is so depressing, but I believe I have to read it because this is addressed with real questions and then try to address this in a constructive fashion. So I just wanted to add that comment. I devoted my life to raising my children in a frum Chassidish way, yet I feel that instead of working as a team, the schools had worked against me. They tried to ruin my children's self-esteem, but were not successful. My boys were exposed to things by other unstimulated students, no parental supervision, and no proper role models. I could go on, but what more point? Okay, he talks here about the one more point is the children going away from the whole Yiddishkeit, which I just read in a different order. Please give me a perspective and tell me if it's so terrible to take my children out of the Chabad system. Please pay more attention to this issue. We need our children to stay frum and Chassidish. Why lose one soul when we work so hard as shluchim and bringing back so many others? Our outside institutions run so professional, have the latest educational techniques, but our children have shtetl quality. Times have changed, the world has changed. Chabad is so good at keeping up with the times in technology and knowledge. Why can't our children benefit? I'm so upset about this that I feel that by putting my shlichus and community aside and creating a new structure and curriculum for Mesiftis and Zal approved by Rabbonim, we shouldn't be making schools once the boys are off the way. Thank you for your time and for the huge impact you have all over. Okay. And one more question. Or is there one more? Yeah, one more question. Boredom and emptiness in yeshivas. I'm a typical yeshiva bacher Not frei, not Chassidish, but I'm just lost. I don't know why I'm in yeshiva, other than I'm not my parents. Other than not my parents not wanting will kill me, that if I don't stay in yeshiva, or why I'm from, other than the same above mentioned reason. I have no deep philosophical questions. I'm just lost. After listening to your webcast, I think I found that Chassidus interests me a lot, but the Chassidus my mashpia and yeshiva teaches does not interest me at all. So why try to do what? So what do I try to do is spend a lot of time listening to rabbis who teach Chassidus in a way that actually sounds intelligent and inspiring. And this makes me feel much better and actually proud to be a Chabad Chassid. My question to you is, how do you learn Chassidus? I try to learn myself, but I don't see the amazing life-changing stuff I hear from Chabad rabbis like you and others. So how can I see it? I don't see anywhere in Chassidus talk about marriage counseling, yet Chabad rabbis are great marriage counselors. I don't see anywhere in Chassidus speak about emotional problems that you guys are so good at helping people with. On top of that, why is my mashpia sound so boring, unintelligent, and closed-minded? The Anhola doesn't like me listening to my iPod all day and ditching all shiurim, so please teach me and so many hungry Bachim how to learn Chassidus correctly. From the bottom of my heart, you must continue what you're doing in helping us all. Okay. Yeah, that's a pretty good sampling of many, many more questions and comments in this vein. I apologize because of the negativity of some of this, but these are real questions, uncensored, and I think that this forum has made a promise, an appropriate promise, that we would stick to addressing things and not in any way filtering. I do, however, want to say as a qualification, without delegitimizing or invalidating any of these questions, I don't want to give the impression that this is necessarily the norm and everybody has these experiences. I say this also on behalf of many of the yeshivas and many Hanhola faculty and principals and teachers that I personally know that dedicate their lives, their hearts and souls entirely to helping children and do a good job. That doesn't mean that it satisfies all. Absolutely not. Systems, resources are limited to address every type of student. When you have a class of 20 or 30, the fact of the matter is the excellent ones and the poorest and the lowest, we'll say the excellent students and the best minds and the weakest minds in every class are usually the ones that suffer most, because simply we don't have one-on-one education. It is done in the classroom setting and so on. I'm not trying to justify anything, and I'm not, again, invalidating. God forbid I wouldn't read these letters if I thought that's the answer. At the same time, every parent is entitled to the anguish they have about their child. To tell a parent, hey, listen, 90% of the class is doing well, or every other child is fine, and it's your fault, or some other type of teretz, is not an explanation. We are here for each other, and we're here to address issues like this. So I do want to address now these issues, but I did want to make that qualification so it shouldn't come across like it's all one big nightmare for everybody. I went through the system myself. I know some pros, it's cons, and in many cases it is case by case. It depends on the teacher, depends on the different faculty. I found some excellent, and I found, of course, those that weren't. We're not here to mention names. We're here to try to be productive in this process. Now, I know that every time I speak about this topic, schools themselves, I get letters from different faculty who, I remember reading one even from Rabbi Wagner in Toronto, who say that it came across as if I'm criticizing or I'm allowing a platform and a voice for critique of all the systems in schools. Now, I understand that the schools work hard and they don't want to be criticized. Nobody likes to be criticized, neither do I. But if we really are in it all together, we have to listen to every grievance. Even if some grievances don't have complete legitimacy, even if there's particular circumstances in certain individual cases, that doesn't mean that that we shouldn't err and shouldn't be able to hear out these parents and children. We're talking about lives, nefoshes. We're talking here, Baneinu Arevim Badeinu, our children, our boys and girls, their future, their destiny, how they'll marry, what kind of families they will build up. So as Chassidim, our highest standard is what we're all looking for. We're not looking for excuses to justify everything. So though we can all find reasons, and I gave a few before, and be melamed zchus, but my goal here is to figure out how we should put our heads together to make things better, not to just say everything is great and the other places it's worse. That's not the approach of Chassidus. What the Rebbe taught us is that we always have to look to improve and make it better. And even if it's good, if good is besser, is besser. If good is better, not better. And I think if we have a humble attitude toward that, both educators, both parents and the children, and all those involved, we would be far more productive instead of being defensive. Unfortunately, what happens is that when you hear letters like this, you hear complaints like this, the education system, the systems and the school systems become defensive. They in turn attack the parents that you're not doing what you have to do. You don't want to pay higher tuition. We can't hire better people because the education system is not attracting the highest and best minds because there are far more competitive jobs that give them more salaries. So what are you complaining about? But that attitude ends up becoming a spitting contest where two wrongs don't make a right and everybody's just blaming each other and we spin our wheels and get nowhere. The Chassidus Torah approach is, all these points are well, let us sit down and think it through, discuss it. I've said this a number of times, you see it in all the sikhs of the Rebbe. Chinuch is a partnership between children, parents, and educators. Well, primarily between parents and educators. Like he says in Hayem Yem, when the Alter Rebbe speaks, V'shanantim levanecha, the whole partnership is that parent is mechuyev, is responsible to educate their child. But due to the circumstances, because of work and other reasons, we make a partnership, and we say, you do, I'll pay you, your expenses that you should do, you should fulfill the mitzvah which is on me. So the whole yesod of chinuch from day one was always a partnership. The truth is, parents should be educating their children. So we hired good teachers and so on. So how did this partnership not fall apart? How did it fall apart? The answer is that due to the circumstances of life, people are busy at work, so the parents are saying, let the teachers take care of it, and that's that. Obviously, that cannot work, because children don't sleep at school, they sleep at home. Their home has equal hashpah, if not more so, than the schools, because you can study everything in school and then come home, and the home can be completely antithetical to what you're studying, or vice versa. I'm not getting into which one is better, but it has to be a joint effort. Children abhor of all things inconsistencies. The Frierdiker Rebbe in the early years, in the Tafshins, when he came to America, and he battled for a few things, that the education system should be number one. There was two main things that they should start, even if there are secular studies, Hebrew studies should be in the morning and not in the afternoon, to show that that's a priority. And number two, that the educators, the mechanchim, the teachers, should be Shemer Shabbos, and they should be Frumi Id. So one of the people from the Federation or one of the education systems said to him, to the Frierdiker Rebbe, Rebbe, there's a fire of ignorance burning. You don't look at whether you're throwing clean water or dirty water to get rid of the fire. At least you have water. So even though the teachers may not be perfect, but at least it's water that is putting out the fire of ignorance. The Frierdiker Rebbe quickly responded, without missing a beat. He said, that's when you're pouring water, but not kerosene. When a teacher behaves in a way that's inconsistent with what he's teaching, that itself is a message. It's better not to teach a child about Shabbos and then you yourself, Rachman al-Islam, are Machal Shabbos. Because that's also a lesson, that you don't have to be what you learn. So yes, dirty water is one thing, but kerosene is throwing fire out, is creating a greater fire. So this is a partnership, and until we accept that, and parents accept their responsibility to have to invest time, as he says in Hayem Yem, the Rebbe Rashab, that just like Hanochas Tefillin is a mitzvah every day, is also a mitzvah to think about the chinuch of your children. Until we don't have that joint partnership, well, unfortunately, I don't see a way around this. So now that's a general statement. As far as these particular letters that I read, let me just say a few key points. Number one is no one is a victim. Even though you may feel, it sounds like you're a victim of, you're sounding like a victim of the circumstances, and I understand why. Because you feel disempowered, you don't feel you can do anything. But there's no question in my mind that we all have the ability to do what we have to do with our children. Even though the chinuch systems, even let's assume that some of this are accurate and that it's exactly the way you're describing it, and the systems are really broken in many ways. As I said earlier, I don't believe that's the case across the board. There are always flaws. But let's even assume you have a real situation where the school or the teachers, due to their own insecurity or incompetence, humiliate or break the spirits of children, and that many parts of the system is about conformity rather than caring about the soul of the child. Even there, you cannot say that's hopeless. You have to obviously nip these things in the bud. Once you're writing already to me, and you're already describing a situation after the fact, it's very different than before the fact. So let me first talk about before the fact. Good parents have to always keep their eyes on the ball, which means their hand has to be on the pulse of their children. From the earliest age, when you start going to chinuch and you see something that is a problem, your child does not feel upbeat, doesn't feel good about the schooling, you don't wait for crisis. You don't wait for it all to fall apart. You have to immediately address it. You pick yourself up and you go speak to the Anhola. You find someone that you could speak to. Now, it could be a scenario, there's no one to talk to. They don't want to hear, they don't want to be criticized. But if you go with a positive attitude, most situations you'll find someone you could speak to. Doesn't mean it'll always be corrected, but at least you're addressing it. And if that circumstance, if you cannot correct it and you see your child continues and you really pay attention, do not just take it for granted that everything is going well. Much of this could be prevented. However, it requires effort. Nothing in this world happens without effort. So I'm talking before the fact. To prevent nightmares like this, to prevent scenarios where you're already dealing with a teenager who's rebellious, doesn't want to go to school, doesn't want to conform, dress a certain way, doesn't want to do this, doesn't want to do that, is another challenge, which I'll get to in a moment. So the first thing is, let's talk about preemptive. The whole point of Mattan Torah, at the youngest of age, the Rebbe assisted, bring them to Aseret Adibas. Why? Because if you do it right, al pi darkei, it says. How could you say mechanech a child according to his way? It's supposed to be according to the Torah's way, God's way. Because it's all about individuality. It's not telling you to take the Torah and change it, God forbid, to tailor it to a person. It means to fit it, to tailor it in the method of that the Torah should speak to this child. If you do that right, gam kiyaskin lo yosim memenu. So even when he gets older, he will not waver. He will not get lost, as some of these parents wrote to me, as I read earlier. So it all begins from the youngest of age, starting from Mattan Torah, where we bring our children to shul, what the home is like, even when the child is lying in a crib and you may think the child doesn't hear or see anything. These things, children, parents' impact is tremendous. The best preemptive medicine is what happens in the early formative years of a child, even before schooling. Remember, your child learned the entire Torah already in its mother's womb. So the challenge now is to maintain that renkheit, that purity, that tada, that kedusha of the child. And that begins from the earliest stages in life. I'm not here to point fingers, but our parents are absolutely responsible to make sure the garden, which is their home, the gani, basal gani, the garden, doesn't have the weeds and has only the cultivating, nurturing elements that make flowers grow. Now, this is not about saying, okay, if you don't do that, you're to blame for everything that happened to your children. I don't think blame is the point here. It's not about pointing fingers, as I said, but it's about taking that responsibility. Now, if you do that in a healthy way, then the child begins to go to school, and you keep your hands, as I said, on the pulse, and you monitor, and you watch, and you ask, and you care, you'll prevent many, many problems. Is it guaranteed? Life is not guaranteed. Anything can happen. Children can be bullied. There's schools, there's bad friends, bad influences. But we're talking here like the Rebbe would say about the helmet with mezuzah. A helmet does not guarantee that it will save a soldier's life, but it definitely minimizes the risks. So if a bullet does come whizzing, the helmet can most likely deflect it. The same thing in life. You do everything possible. You heighten and the defenses and the offenses, even more than the defense. You create passionate Yiddishkeit in your home. Your Shabbos table is alive. Yiddishkeit is alive. These things impact children more than anything. Because they can learn even in the best schools. And they come home and their Shabbos and Yontiv is boring, is unstimulating, bickering, fighting, not shalom bayis. The list goes on. Do not minimize these impacts as well. To just say that schools is all completely about a school thing, absolutely not. Now, if we did our part, and then the school has its challenges, and your hands, as I said, is on the pulse, you can prevent or address many things. And if your child doesn't work out, there are other schools, there are alternatives. Nobody is trapped. I can't go further than this because of the customization of case by case, but this is a general principle that I think if we set our minds this way, a very healthy, normal approach. Now, what about after the fact? My child already went through and got already hurt, and there's already a situation with somewhat of a crisis or almost a crisis. So there, obviously, it's a whole different story. Then it's like going to an emergency room where you now have to stop the bleeding, and you have to deal with real wounds and real infections. So this, again, is case by case. I would suggest in any given situation, there's never anything that's called hopeless. It's just a matter of putting our heads together and dealing with this situation. You have to find someone you can talk to that can, first of all, dissect the situation, break it down, and say, okay, let's divide and conquer. To just say my child is completely turned off, bored, sick, and so on, I want to move on. Every situation has to be broken into components. Someone that can talk to your child, whether it's a boy or a girl, depends on the age. You do not say it's all or nothing. Yes, it's much easier, as I said earlier, to preempt all this, but if it's a 12-year-old child, or it's a 15-year-old child, or a 20-year-old child, the neshama is alive. Even if on the conscious level, as I mentioned before, there may be wounds and scars and all kinds of turned off and people are hurt and so on, but inside is a healthy soul, a healthy heart beating, and you have to reactivate it, just like it is with physical health. If preemptive medicine is the best, preventive and preemptive. However, if a person, God forbid, is ill, there's there's an immune system, there are medication, there are doctors, there are people who know how to intervene. The same thing is in this situation. When there's challenges regarding to education, take the bull by the horns and now address it now. To beat ourselves up and say, I didn't do this, I didn't do that, yeah, maybe all true. But right now, this child is at stake. The future is at stake. The destiny of this child. So now you have to begin. If you're listening to this and you wrote me these questions, I'm saying right now you have to address it. I don't know who these people writing to me, so I don't know your situation. I don't know the dynamics involved. I don't know the pathology of the family home. But always problems are a result of usually more than one element. And problems are not just the problems, it's how you deal with problems. I find that most problems are not the problem itself, it's that we don't know how to deal with a problem, and then that's even a bigger problem. Because it's one thing, you get into trouble, and you call for help. What happens if you don't know how to call for help? Or you're calling the wrong people? Or you're doing things that actually create more problems than solve? This is why it needs to be addressed. So anyone in this situation, you want to reach out to me, feel free to do so. You can call me, you can write simon@meaningfullife.com so I could be able to respond to you. Remember, at the anonymous forum, I cannot respond because I don't know who's writing. And I could try to direct you. But there is no such thing as impossible. There's no such thing as hopeless. This is not the language that doesn't exist in the Chassidic dictionary. Words like this. Simply not. You'll never hear it, not from any of the Rabbeim, the Rebbe, absolutely not. That was one of the central themes. Every situation can be handled. Doesn't matter, even if it may seem hopeless to you, that's to you. We all have our blind spots. So, as far as this partnership between parents and children, between parents and educate and school systems, that's where the corrections will be made. It's not a simple matter. We've discussed it in previous episodes. I'm not saying it's easy to change the system, but some of the points I made here are the key to the whole thing. And to do it in confrontational ways is usually not the healthy way, unless you're literally dealing with a open, direct criminal activity or negligence and so on. But generally, if you go with a positive approach and a few parents together, remember, at the end of the day, the schools need us, we need the schools, and it's a partnership. And if it's done in the right way, in a humble way, much change can be facilitated. Maybe the time has come to create a revolution in our education system. Everyone always wanted to do it. I remember that we all go through the 3 stages when we're in yeshiva, when we're young and naive and idealistic. We first think, okay, you know what, I'm going to create a whole new education system, much better than the one I went through. Then you realize how difficult that is. You come to the second conclusion, I'll go into the existing systems and repair them. And then you find out how difficult that is, and you come to the third stage, I better just do something else. It doesn't resolve anything. Resolution will come with wisdom, experience, and doing things in a tactful and diplomatic way. So I hope I addressed some of this. I'm sure there'll be comments and feedback, and as a result, I'll talk more about it as we move along in the coming episodes. Since we're talking about children, there's another topic that came up, which is the topic of ungrateful adult children. And I should say one more thing, because I see what the question is, the yeshiva system failing our children. Well, as I just pointed out, I just want to spell out. The yeshiva system is failing our children to some extent, perhaps. But it's not just the yeshiva system failing our children, we're failing our children, it's parents as well. As I said, it's a joint effort, and we're all responsible for the good, and we're all responsible if things don't go so well. And that's why we have to put our heads together, as I said. And to go find a scapegoat and say it's just the yeshiva system and that's it, it's incorrect. Absolutely not. Are there problems in the systems? Absolutely. But there are also other problems. And as I said, they all begin usually at home. And that's where we have to focus on most, the environments that we create for our children, the healthy environments and healthy influences. Okay, I just wanted to spell it out. Even though I said it, I reiterated many things, but I just wanted to answer, make sure that question was covered. So, ungrateful adult children. Dear Rabbi Jacobson, thanks for your wonderful Sunday night and Wednesday night broadcasts. Wednesday night, just for the records, I give a class every Wednesday night, which can also be seen at meaningfullife.com. It's a different sort of class than what I do now in my life, but you're definitely welcome to participate in that as well. That's just a footnote. I'll continue reading. So thank you for your wonderful Sunday night and Wednesday night broadcast. It's such a breath of fresh air. Finally, a discussion about today's issues in a Torah forum. Thank you very much for that. And here's the question. Do you have any advice on handling my children's sense of entitlement? Of course, we want to assist them, but sad to say, it seems that married children today have an expectation of being wined and dined and given money, and even helped to buy a house without barely offering a thank you. This is very different than when I was brought up, where we had little, expected nothing, and honored our parents for just being there. Why do children have this sense of entitlement? Second question in this regard. This is a painful subject, but it needs attention. When I grew up, Grandma and Grandpa were always invited to our home. We even had a grandmother live with us for years. We children gave up a bedroom for her. I remember neither of my grandparents had money, and my parents never expected any money or presents. It was just an honor to have them and be in their presence. I have married children and no one living at home. When it comes Yom Tov, sadly, we are held at arm's length. There are only certain times when one can come, and we are told how long we can stay. As the grandchildren get older, they can't come to the phone because they're busy. We tried to inculcate Yiddishkeit into them. Some are very modern and even have shaved the beard and took off the sheitel. They want to feel free. I feel we missed something in their upbringing. If we try to discuss their hashkafa, we are silenced. We don't want to battle. If we are silent, they want us to approve of what they're doing, and we don't feel it's proper. We don't want to battle. We have been told we are not invited for Pesach because they don't keep it like us. Okay, so they don't. But they also feel we disapprove, so that is another reason they don't want us. My husband and I feel bereft. We never had much. We struggled. It was not easy raising them, and there were many. We probably were not the greatest parents. We made mistakes, so I can understand a bit of distance. But this? Suffice to say, these children were brought up here in Chabad, went to camp, went to school. We as parents can be treated with some degree of respect. We cannot voice our hurt or have a dialogue. Please, I would very much like to hear what can be done. This is not an isolated story. It becomes more widespread. However, many parents would rather not say and sit alone every Yom Tov than have people know that this is happening. Thank you for this opportunity. Nothing is perfect. We all have room for improvement. My husband and I would love to hear how to improve, but I think this issue is not a one-way street. Okay, the truth is the two questions I read, I should have kept them separate because one is about entitlement and this one is a little different. So let's start with Entitlement 1. It's very difficult to speak in broad strokes because every case is different. I know I say this very often, but that's the reality. But I will say the following in general. There's no question our generation has a much more sense of entitlement than previous generations. I remember my father, my parents, my mother to be well for many healthy years, and my father, whose 10th Yortzeit was last week. They grew up in a different world where just surviving was a blessing. They have very little sense of entitlement. We grew up in freedom, what they call Americana chocoladnikas, which means spoiled brats or spoiled kids. We have a sense of entitlement. And it has a blessing in it, the blessing of freedom, the blessing of comfort, the blessing of prosperity, everyone on their level. But I mean to say we don't have to worry that our father or mother is going to be taken away and arrested. We don't have to worry about Nazis and about Bolsheviks and Soviets and so on and so forth, communists. So there's that positive side. The negative side of it is it creates Vayishman, Yeshurun, Vayivot. This expression, when Yeshurun gets Vayishman, means satisfied, is sated and satisfied and filled up and indulged. Vayivot, it begins to kick, it begins to rebel. Because we sense we deserve it is the responsibility of parents, and again, going back to the early age, to teach their children that even though we have these blessings, we never just take them for granted. We make a bracha on what we eat, even though God blessed us with abundance in food. We acknowledge those that did things for us. We're generous. We are grateful, gratitude. These are midas that we have to inculcate into our children from the youngest of age. This is what counters the sense of entitlement of keiche ve'etzim yadi, that I am a self-made person, I deserve everything. Once a person has a sense of entitlement, yes, it's a lot more difficult to go fight it. So I'm not here to criticize. I don't know what caused the children to have this sense, but this sense clearly has to be countered by having the humility and realizing all our blessings come from above. You're not a self-made person. No problem to be acknowledged for what we've accomplished, but we have to always have that sense of modesty and humility. How do you deal with it? As soon as possible that you recognize your children have it, you have to nip it in the bud as well. You have to figure out ways not to punish, not to deprive, but to recognize that for everything that you give to your children, just showering them with gifts and so on, has to be done in a way where the children recognize that they're responsible. You give them a gift, you make sure that they are taught that they have to give a gift themselves. They have to be charitable. What did Rebbe teach us when he gave dollars on Sunday? He gave $1, that you should go give $1 to someone else. So the more you want to give your children, one way to counter that is by teaching them to give and not just to take. Teaching children to take, maybe make them feel good, and it's a good thing, but they should know that when everything they take, when everything you give them, they have to also learn to give to others. There are other advice that I will continue to give on this topic, but time is limited, and I just wanted to just address that. As far as the second question, I'd rather review that in the coming episodes, which will be not next week because of Shavuos, but the following week, because it deserves more attention, and about parenting and children not responding to parent. But as everything, like I said before, there's no problem that can be solved. So I read the question, and I apologize, I will answer it in the 2 weeks from now in the next episode. Because of the time, I want to go over to the essays, and there are other topics that I was going to address about marriage, but I see time is running out. So let me go over to the 3 wonderful essays in our continuing series of reviewing the MyLife Chassidus Applied essays, the essay contest that took place from Chavdal Tevis till Adar, and then the judge, then we announced the winners on Chavzayin Adar, and then Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and so on. Now, all these essays can be received in your inbox if you just subscribe to our weekly newsletter. So every week we send a new essay out, and we're also posting them on meaningfullife.com/mylife/contest. And we will review another 3 essays now in this series. Again, all excellent essays. 2 of them are Hebrew, and 1 of them in English. And let's begin with the first one, which is titled Ma L'Kabel Ma L'Shanes, Coping with Mistakes, written by Noam Shapiro, 41, works at Merkaz HaPe'ilas Beis HaSefer L'Teres HaNefesh, some psychological institute, Bat Ayin, Israel. Okay, so it's a Hebrew one, but nevertheless, I will try to summarize it. It really addresses in a very fascinating way how we deal with mistakes that we make. We all deal with all kinds of mistakes as things that we, intentional mistakes, non-intentional. We did something wrong, I said something wrong, I hurt somebody, I broke something, I abandoned someone, I disappointed someone, etc. How do you deal with these type of negative experiences? And the essay paper dedicates itself to explain how the natural, spontaneous reaction that people do in coping with the mistakes, and comparing it to the Torah of the Alter Rebbe, how the Alter Rebbe told us how to deal with it. It's a very fascinating, actually, comparison, and I encourage you to read this. As I said earlier, if anybody's, right now it's in Hebrew, if anybody would like to volunteer to help us translate these into English, it would be greatly appreciated and a great service, and I'm sure it will also enrich your life, so please contact us about that. So basically, the author of this essay compares and says that when we do something wrong, 2 things happen. There's addressing and trying to cope with the actual negative action, and the second is coping and how it reflects on us. Makes us feel like, we're not competent, we're not capable, that we are flawed as people. In general, what people do to cope is three different things they do to cope in difficult situations. One is they minimize the problem. This is regarding the actual action. They minimize the problem. It wasn't so significant, and they go there. The next two are regarding the person. They minimize your responsibility in doing this. Someone else was at fault. What I had to do was not really my responsibility, it was someone else. And the third thing we do is we blame it on ourselves, but we blame it on ourselves because I wasn't educated properly. It was due to my parents, due to other forces, environment that caused me to do it. And this is how different people deal with these type of things. What's wrong with these approaches? Even though on one hand it makes you feel better because you don't feel so bad, the problem is you're avoiding responsibility, so therefore you're never going to repair it. Number two, it's just a false approach. It's creating a type of distortion in how you view things. Number three, you burn bridges because you end up hurting your relationships by avoiding and denying your responsibility in different things that you may have done. And finally, number four, it causes you to constantly have this inner frustration and even anger, because at the end of the day, you haven't really resolved anything. You just pushed it away and avoided the problem. So when you feel that someone else was responsible, what does it make you feel? You lose your dignity. The fact that you're always saying someone else was responsible is maybe makes you feel better, but at the end of the day, it undermines your own self-respect. Then he continues on and talks about the key difference between Tanya and the natural approach, which is the opposite approach. Most people will say, therefore, you know what? I'm upset and frustrated by my actions. But I'm sorry. I'm frustrated by the fact that I'm that type of person that could have done something like that. When in Tanya is the exact opposite. Your actions you can control, but who you are you cannot. So the general approach is that my actions I can't control, but who I am I could control, and therefore I feel bad about myself. The whole Tanya comes to say you are total control over your actions and your machshava dibur u'maaseh. Your levushim. Your koiches you cannot change. And therefore you don't have to feel bad about it. The frustration of what Tanya addresses, the frustration a person has about themselves, is to realize that is taka the mulchama that God wants us to fight, and the development of those faculties to be able to fight these battles. I mean, that's a summary of this paper. It's a very good paper. I encourage you to read it. And let me move on to the next one. The next one addresses the issue of rising above despair, Yush. By Yael Friedman, 42, self-employed in Kfar Chabad. And this one essentially goes into the whole idea of how one deals with the issues of despair and takes control of their lives. He goes through a bunch of steps, calls 4 steps that he calls being aware of the problem, then accountability and tracking the issues. The next is to deal with to feel that you can solve the problem, and finally to call out for help to others and not feel completely isolated. Also built on Tanya, goes through a whole approach of dealing with despair. Okay. This again is posted and you can read this essay. And finally, titled My Anxiety in Chassidus, written by Yosef Malkin, 43, psychotherapist, Beitar Illit, Israel. So all 3 from Israel this time. And this one is a very personal one, very emotional, where a person through Chassidus, this writer through Chassidus, came to be able to deal with their personal anxiety, and talks a lot about his own personal life, and then says how Chassidus taught him to take responsibility. That in life, in general, in the secular world, what you're taught is that you're a victim of circumstances, and that's that. You can't do much. What he learned from Chassidus, he says, is that we all are able to have a relationship and repair the relationship. Today I understand, he writes, that the whole things of teaching of Chassidus are there to reestablish the trust in a relationship. Chassidus teaches that we must emulate the world of tikkun, which balances many different feelings that all need to be respected. I learned from Chassidus that I am not worthless, that I will be heard, that I am never alone or abandoned, even if I do something wrong. Regardless of my actions, I am still loved, and when something goes wrong in my life, there usually is enough good there for me to be able to deal with it. So it's fascinating to see, because a person who did not find this in Chassidus, without Chassidus, did not have these feelings, and Chassidus taught him how to have these feelings. This is encapsulated in the understanding of Hashem's unity, the author writes. He is a being without an ego or needs, and therefore his capacity to connect with me is not based on any bias. He uses davening as a vehicle for feeling this connection. And Chassidus views the human struggle between feeling alone and being connected through a relationship as the essential struggle in life. The focus, and obviously saw that is found in Chassidus, is therefore core and essential. What is very nice about this essay is applying very basic principles of Chassidus to dealing with the general anxieties and the challenges that life presents. So these are the 3 essays. Again, I don't know if I did justice to them. I just gave at least a summary. And we will continue reviewing these essays. And I welcome anyone who wants to volunteer and help us in developing MyLife Chassidus Applied, especially the essay contest. And with this, we will conclude with a blessing for Kabbalas HaTorah b'simcha b'primis, as the Rebbe quotes the Frierdiker Rebbe as saying, both simcha and primis, which of course should be all joyous, that the whole education system, the way we teach our children, the way we receive the Torah should be with joy, with pleasantness, and beprimis, not mechanical, not makivdik, not as superficial, but in a way that imbues in each of us a deep love and passion for Judaism, for Chassidus, for Torah, for the Rabbeim. So God should bless everybody to have a Kabbalas HaTorah b'simcha b'primis, and I hope the themes that I addressed here will help us all prepare for Mattan Torah even better way than we would have on our own. This has been MyLife Chassidus Applied, episode 68. Next Sunday there will not be an episode, obviously, because of Mattan Torah. There will be something far greater than MyLife Chassidus Applied, the thing itself, the original itself, Kabbalas HaTorah, that we will all, Mr. Hashem, receive with our children, all of us together, even the young newborns, as the Rebbe encourages and wants everyone to bring their children to hear the Aseret HaDibra, the 10 Commandments, Mattan Torah, in Shul. The Medrash says it's like recreating the experience that happened 3,327 years ago. And next Sunday after that, we will continue episode 69, 8 to 9 p.m. Again, everyone have a very good bench to Yontif, bench to week. Kabbalas HaTorah b'simcha b'pnimius.